I have a dream, that's all I need. I'll make it happen with some work and belief. Know what I want, so I'll take it on. I've made mistakes, but mistakes make you strong.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to Hounds to Heroes. Today I have Nicole and Louie with us doing their interview today. Let's learn a little bit about them, shall we? Today we have Nicole and Louie with us today. Louie's a golden retriever mix. Nicole had an original service dog named Max, but he ended up retiring due to attacks from multiple dogs and ended up becoming reactive. Nicole has owner-trained dogs all of her life, and she really loves working with them. She also works with her friend who owns a dog training business. Nicole is working on getting her certification. She really wanted to work with service dogs after following a YouTuber named Lexi. She wanted to start training her own service dog. Max is a retired service dog for psychiatric. In 2018, she was diagnosed with autism, and also in 2017, she got into an accident with her mom's scooter, which ended up injuring her back badly. She's now needing mobility assistance. Nicole has 14.7K followers on TikTok. She provides education, making videos to help people with education and in the community and others as well. Let's get started in this interview, shall we? Question number one is what is the hardest thing about training your own service dog?
Honestly, the hardest thing I would say is like figuring out what works with your dog. Like, because it's not easy in the first few times. Like, some things that work for one dog's not going to work for your dog. So that's honestly sometimes some of the harder things to figure out. And some dogs learn at a different pace. So like if you have a dog that learns slower, that's also harder when you're training your dog. So
Okay, I can understand that. So when you're out in public, how do you handle talking to people about your service dog? So like if someone asks you a training question or what your dog does or anything on those lines, how do you handle talking to strangers about what you do for your dog?
honestly, at first I get kind of stressed, but then I'll worm into it a little bit. Like, for example, the other day when that lady came up and was talking to me about what to do with her service dog, I just try to listen. Like, if they ask oh, how did you train your dog, I'd be like, oh, well, I honestly, with Max, I just watched videos and trained him through those videos and learned that way. With Lou, I worked with my friend who did a lot of his basic training because the situation at my house, I couldn't have him with me in that situation. And so it really honestly depends on what the question is. Like, if they're like, how do you train your dog to sit, then I would explain that. So yeah.
Which I completely understand that because a lot of us that either got our dog from a program if they were programmed or just did videos. I did the same thing when people asked me the same thing, and I was like, I just learned off of YouTube videos. Literally look up on YouTube videos how to do something, how to train a service dog, and they'll pop up for free because I don't have the money to do a trainer at all. So I was like, I have to do this all by myself. Now, next time when I need a service dog, like when I start retiring Leo, I may look into other things because I don't know if I'm going to be able to train him by myself due to the fact that I have kids now. So, and I say to everybody on like my platform and you probably would too, or do sit there and tell them like it's not easy training service dogs. It's like
It's
time
not.
consuming. It's like basically having a third child in like, well, for me, a third child is like having a child in there that you have to constantly take care of, constantly do things with, and constantly train because you just have no choice. So people out there start saying like psychiatric service dogs are just another form of ESAs. They're not real service dogs. What do you say to those people, and what do you want them to know about what psychiatric service dogs can do for somebody that's disabled that needs a psychiatric dog?
So if someone comes up and says oh, well, your dog's a psychiatric service dog, well, that's an ESA, I explain well, ESAs are specifically emotional support, where psychiatric service dogs take that a little bit further, where they're task trained for it, not just giving you support. Like, sure, support helps. It's an amazing thing, and I will never disregard or, like, cast aside ESA as saying they're less than, but they don't have rights like psychiatric service dogs do. So they're trained differently. Or, like, the need for any psychiatric service dog takes the need for an ESA, like, a little bit more. So, like, for example, agoraphobia, where you are literally afraid to leave the house. And an ESA can only do so much for that because they wouldn't be able to go with you. A service dog would be able to help with that and help get you out, help, like, lower your heart rate down if you're having, like, panic attacks, because a lot of the times when you are afraid to leave the house and you get out, you start panicking. And a service dog would be able to help with that, and that's very different than just a dog being there for support. Like, with DPT, so how DPT works is they, like, lay across your legs, and then that just helps regulate your blood pressure and your blood flow, which then in return lowers your heart rate, which in return stops your panic attack. So for people who say, like, they're not the same, it's very untrue. Yeah.
Right. I get that, and I've asked this question to a couple of, like, a veteran who will be my last video that goes up from a private interview, and she's like, she says the same things. I try to explain what the dog does, like, even though we don't have, like, for example, for me, I have seizures, like, we don't have those, it's still an injury of the brain as well, to where we have, like, it is very disabling and very, like, it's nothing that we can control just as much as, like, somebody with seizures or that someone that needs mobility assistance. And I find that when people say that, very disheartening to people that need psychiatric service, because my dog is a service dog for seizures, but also is somewhat psychiatric as well, which you know, because you know me. We know each other. Have you ran into fakes with Max or Louie? And if so, what has happened? And did you take the time to deal with that person, or did you just like educate them, or did you just, like, leave and didn't want anything to do with it?
So, just for example, this is, like, one of the worst stories of a fake that I've ran into, and it was with him. This is when we were first starting to train. So, like, I was not super educated. Now I would handle this very differently. But what happened is someone brought their bully mix in on a flexi that was aggressive. And we first, like, there was an actual legit service dog in there. And we ran into them. It was a German Shepherd, beautiful dog. And then we just heard barking. And so I'm like, okay, well, because the guy that had that service dog was an ambulatory wheelchair user. And I was like, well, maybe the dog's barking because he fell out of the wheelchair or something's going on. So I went over and I went to look, and then there's just this dog that was, like, its owner was on a completely different aisle, and the dog was just hanging out in the aisle barking at people. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a service dog. And I turned around and I walked away, went to the managers. They're like, well, we can't really do anything. I was like, well, you can. Because when it saw Max, it started, like, trying to get after him and was choking him out. And they're like, okay, well, we'll go talk to the guy. And I ended up leaving because I left my debit card in my car. And I came back and they were at the checkout. And I ran into them again. This dog comes flying from the checkout section at Max's throat. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not legal. And I put him behind this clothing section. Like, you know how, like, the racks at Walmart are? Where, like, there's the clothes on, like, the different tiers. I put him behind that so the dog couldn't get to him. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not legal. And he's like, well, he's my registered service dog. And I was like, there's no such thing as registration. Like, service dogs are task trained to help mitigate your disability or disabilities. Like he is, for example, they're not allowed to be aggressive. That's an immediate disqualification if your dog's trying to attack another dog. And he's like, well, he's protecting me because I've been attacked by dogs before. I'm like, well, that's not legally allowed. Like, your dog can't do protection work as a service dog. This guy, like, started flipping out, and his dog was feeding off of it, and then just started barking, was lunging so bad. I should have left, honestly, but me being, like, super uneducated, stayed there, stupidly. And he starts coming at me, and I was like, well, this is, like, my dog. Like, I guarantee you, if I brought my dog out, your dog would bite him. He was like, oh, you want to go for it? Started, like, walking towards me. And then one of the workers called over the little walkie-talkies they have, like, hey, we need a manager down here, there's a fight happening. And when he heard that, the guy literally turned around and ran out the door with his dog, dragging it behind him as it was, like, barking. So, it's, like, one of the worst situations I've ever been in with a fight, but now I do it completely differently. Like, if I see a dog, I will literally just turn around and go the different direction. Like, I'm not going to engage with them in a point where it puts me at risk or puts my dog at risk, because from that situation, I did actually end up passing out from it because it got my heart rate too high, and then it dropped, basically, when he started doing DPT. So then I passed out because of it. So now I've learned that, like, it's not worth fighting with people who choose to bring their pets in. If it's aggressive, just walk the other way, tell someone about it. It's not worth standing there fighting with someone over it.
And I've learned that as well, especially with having my dog severely attacked and everything. I decided that I was no longer going to take the time of day with fake dogs with my dog there. The only time I really interact with somebody that I would say would be like acting like a fake dog, I would just try to educate them without my dog being there, and I would go up nicely and be nice to them, because I feel like a lot of service dog handlers in the community like to just go out and be like, your dog is doing this, and just like bashing that person. And as a person that gets defensive over like everything, that it has an opinion, and when I have an opinion, I will fight for that opinion no matter what. Ooh, my cat just got scared. I will sit there and defend me. And if we come at people aggressively, everyone's going to think that we're coming at them in a mean way when we're not really trying to, but you kind of look like an ass, like, if we're being honest. And that's just, I decided, like, I'm going to go up, I'm going to be nice about it, I'm going to say, hey, I don't know if you know this, and I want to talk in a calm manner. Because I learned, even with having kids, if you do it in a calmer manner, they're going to listen more than just yelling. And yelling doesn't get anywhere. And that's the good thing about motherhood. That's taught me. What is your favorite task that you have taught either Max or Louie?
Honestly, switch command. It's not really even a task, it's just something that is so important. Because say, like, you're walking somewhere and there's a dog coming towards you, you just tell them switch, and they're the opposite side of the dog. And it just makes it easier, so if the dog does come flying at you, you're not worrying about pulling your dog out of the way to get that dog away from yours. It's just already out of the way, so that you can just body block. But switch is, like, one of the easiest things, especially, like, when, for example, if you're in Goodwill. Goodwill's notorious for very small spaces, where if your dog is in a switch or, like, underneath the clothes, out of the way, they're not going to be blocking that aisle for people going behind you or trying to go around you.
What is the hardest task you've had to train your service dog to do?
Honestly, heart rate alert. There's so much that goes into it, like, so to even collect the scent samples, you can't eat or drink anything that's scented 30 minutes prior to a scent sample, so you really have to plan out what you're doing. So a lot of the times, like, usually when I go to Walmart, it's late at night after dinner, so then I kind of have to be like, well, I kind of have to wait half an hour before I can go out, or I just can't take a scent sample. And then when you're doing the scent sample, there's so much that goes into it, because, like, cross-contamination is a thing. Like, you get to touch it with your bare hands, because whatever scent's on your hand will go onto that swab and then contaminate the scent. Your dog could be, like, alerting to something completely different than what your heart rate is. And then there's also storage. Like if you're using plastic containers, the plastic seeps the scent, which makes it basically useless at the point because it then like gets rid of the scent. Or if you're using like metal containers, it's like a lot easier. Then there's storage. Like storage is depending on what scent sample you're taking. For heart rate, I usually after 2 weeks I throw it away in the freezer because it'll just start going bad. And the reason why I say bad is because the scent will start fading away, and then you want that scent to be really, really strong, especially when you're first training that dog. And if it's weak, then your dog's not going to be able to pick up on it as easily. So that's like one of the hardest things to train, in my opinion, is like any scent training.
Okay. Which I can understand that being difficult and hard to do because it was hard for me with the seizures and everything, teaching my dog how to sense that out. And we got to the point to where now he like sense up to an hour before I'm about to have one. But it was very difficult at the time when he was training to do it. So I can understand that as well, and I would say that too. So have you been denied anywhere and what happened with that?
Honestly, thankfully, where I live, I haven't really been denied except for like, I don't think that dog can be here. Oh, well, he's a service dog. Okay, let me go ask my manager. But when, like, that's the really good thing about living in a small area is they usually, in my area, sadly, is very pet friendly. So there's very limited places where I can go with him without having to worry about a pet being there. And so because of that, it's very rare to get access issues where I live. But like I went to Boston with my friend last year, and with Uber we had access issue after access issue after access issue with Max because he's a pit mix. And one of the worst ones was we went up. It was a guy from New York, and my friend opened up the back. She started putting her backpack in. He's like, "Oh well, that dog can't be here." And she's like, "Well, he's service dog. He has to be there. And like by Uber policy you can't deny us." And he's like, "Well, I don't like dogs. I've been bit by dogs." She's like, "Well, he's not gonna bite you. He's gonna be on the floor. He's gonna be out of the way." And he's like, "Well, he has to be in the trunk then." And I was like, he can't be in the trunk because that completely negates the like reasoning for him to be with me. And also that's like animal cruelty too, to shove a dog in a trunk with no windows, no nothing, for however long the trip's gonna be. And at that point, we kind of just, Liz, who is my friend, she took her backpack out. We kind of just let it go after that point because he wasn't listening. He wasn't, like, trying to be like, okay, well, you can come in. Like, he was just genuinely not gonna let us in. So we just kind of let him just drive off. And then we reported him to Uber. And then Uber texted us back, like, 15-ish minutes later saying, hey, we got your issue, your access issue. We told the guy what can and can't be done, and he's now been fired because he refuses to let service dogs in his car. So like that's what happened. Like
Something was done about it, and a lot of people, like stores, don't do anything about it. So I'm glad that there was a good ending for you when that situation arrived. Sorry, let me talk right. So my next question is have you ever experienced someone petting your dog without permission? If so, what has happened?
yes, actually there's a video of where I didn't handle that as well as I wish I did. But with Max, there was a guy who was like, "Hi," like right behind me in my space, and I was like, "Oh no, thank you." And then he went to like go and touch him anyways, and so I pulled Max out of the way. And like some people don't understand that like service dog means you can't touch them, but also like in that situation where I did pull him away, I wish I didn't do it on his prong or the way I did, because that could have hurt him. Thankfully, it didn't. But in the situation, I was already. So, like, I have a thing where, like, when I'm going into a medical episode, I get super irritable, and then I kind of lose control of, like, what goes on and, like, bodily functions and stuff. So, like, it was instinct to just pull him out of the way and just not really fully pay attention to how hard I pulled him. And afterwards, I realized how hard I, like, felt awful about it. But
Right. And sometimes we do things and we don't realize how it impacts because we just do it out of instinct. And coming from a service dog handler and a mom at the same time, I did the same thing with my kid and my dog, where they do something and I'm like, or somebody does something and I like instantly, instinctively do something that's not right. And it's just, it comes with the territory of like the anxiety with dogs as well. Is
Yeah.
that when people come up and try to pet the dog and try to do stuff and we try to tell them no, a lot of people don't have common courtesy, which is very irritating because they think because it's a dog they can just automatically pet because it has a cute face. And I think that a lot of people need to educate themselves on that and learn more about what service dogs are, because it if it was like a canine dog, for example, you wouldn't want to go up and pet a canine dog because
Yeah.
they'll bite you. What's the difference between a canine dog and a service dog? Yeah, our dogs are not going to bite you, but they're there for a reason, like canine dogs are. So in the service dog community, there's a lot of toxicity going on. How do you think we can do better as a community to lessen the toxicity or help other service dog handlers out?
Honestly, the best thing you can do is stop jumping to conclusions. Like, that's where a lot of the toxicity starts, is there's a service dog handler who just sees an 8-second video and then they assume that they know what's going on in that situation. Like, towards Max's end of the career, I was getting dragged hard because he was stressed out, and I was trying to work him through that. End result is I couldn't. But what they didn't see was me working on that so hard, and they just jumped to the conclusions and super toxic, like, down my throat, saying I was abusing him and stuff like that. So, like, the first thing I would say is honestly just ask. Like, hey, like, I know your dog is being like this. I know, like, or whatever situation is like, I know this is what the situation is in this video. What are you, like, are you trying to actively work on that situation? And if so, like, what are you doing? Kind of thing. And, like, stop also saying, like, for example, like, train the dog in front of you. That's a lot of where the toxicity comes to. It's like so many people just be like, oh, well, you have a prong on your dog. That's abuse. Like, not understanding that, like, the prong's there for a reason. They could have tried everything before, but you didn't ask that. You just assumed. And then now jumping down their throat for abusing their dog. Like, and how I feel like we could do so much better on that is just, like, see the dog in front of the person. They're doing what's best for works for that dog. Don't assume that they're not, and just ask. Like, that's honestly the best thing we can do is just stop assuming and just ask.
I agree to that as well because a lot of people go on there and they think one thing because they see an 8 second to 30-second video and they think that that's how the dog lives their life on a day-to-day basis. And I agree with the fact that you don't know what happened prior nor what's going on in the video to what they do daily to really understand. And if you ask a person nicely and not even like comment, just sit there and just, you know, message the person privately if possible, saying, hey, this is what I saw in the video. Can I help in any sort of way? Or anything like that. And even if you can't message the person, at least like say, hey, this is not meaning towards in a hateful way. I just want to make sure, at least in the comments, so that way, because I
Yeah.
feel like with people, and I even do the same thing, when you write down a message, a lot of people take it as a bad way because we can't, because we go by facial expressions as humans. We go
Yeah.
by the way you talk about it, the way you act about it. And with texting, it's very hard to determine whether you're meaning that in a good way or a bad way. So if you put not to be mean or just to let you know or something like that to let the person know, hey, I'm not trying to be mean at all. I'm trying to help you and see if I can help you more, it would be a lot better.
Yeah.
So my last question I have for you is what does having a service dog mean to you and how has it enhanced your life in any sort of way?
So before I even had a service dog, I never really realized that I could, because as a person, I'm very blind to, like, what my symptoms are and everything. Like, I'm kind of just like, oh, well, that's normal kind of thing. And then when I got Max, he started, like, so many people get after me for this, naturally alerting. And that is a thing that your dog can do. Granted, I think it should be trained after that too, so it's not just left on the natural alert. But he started naturally alerting to me, and I was like, oh, well then. I started looking into it more, started seeing more service dog handlers on YouTube and stuff, like Lexi Goodbout, if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Probably not. But, for example, I saw her. About. Yeah. I saw her on YouTube and just started, like, really looking into having a service dog. And I was like, oh, well, this is something that really could help me. And I started training Max about it. And honestly, and, like, I started training him for that. And when he retired, I just realized how, like, much he really helped me. Like, I was having really bad panic attacks. Like, I went out to the mall with my aunt, and just, there's maybe 30 people around me, but just those 30 people were enough to be like, like, where Max is there, he'd be able to do, like, crowd control and stuff like that, be able to work through that with me, and like, it helped me so much having him, because then I wouldn't be like, oh, well, now I'm alone, there's no one going to be able to help me, because a lot of my family doesn't understand, so to speak, and they don't know how to help. They can try, they do try, and they just don't know what to do. And we're like, with Max and Lou, they're both trained to help, and it makes it so much easier. Sorry.
That too, because for me it means independence, it means living my life day to day. And when I first came into the service dog community, I only knew Dominique Weems, Service Dog Paws. I knew Lexi and everything else, which I'm actually trying to get an interview with her as well. We actually spoke a couple times, and I'm hopefully going to get an interview with her if she has the time to do it, because her and Dominique and Sergeant and everything else like that, they were my introductions to service dogs, because I only thought that service dogs could be for, like, certain things like blind people, and I didn't have any education. And when I started looking about the service dog community, it was about the time when I started having my seizures, because I had a traumatic brain injury done, and I was getting to the point to where, like, I couldn't go into a store without having a seizure. Like, at least I was having seizures maybe like 4 times a day when I first had my traumatic brain injury, and it was serious, and I was in the hospital and out of hospitals all the time. It was bad. And learning about the laws and having a community that I could go into and talk with, especially now that I'm a mom of 2 and home alone and I don't have a lot of people to talk to, at least grown-up wise, having a community that I can go into and have conversations with people and being there is great. It can be toxic. It can be, like, a lot of people can stick their nose into something that they shouldn't have, but at the same time I'm very grateful for it. You know, and
yeah, exactly.
Like with you, you know, I'm grateful that we have somewhat of a friendship, or at least acquaintances. I like to say friendship because we follow each other. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, we're not like close, like best friends, but we don't have beef with one another. But I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come live with me and do my second interview live. I know that it can be hard and a busy schedule and a busy day-to-day life, so I appreciate you taking the time out of the day to do this.
Okay, it's a dream, and I pray as a team, one day it'll be me. If I want it, then I'll get